What's up, y'all? This is swirling around my brain, and so I'm leaving it as a what's up, y'all. Um, as we move toward this Aries solar eclipse that I am feeling quite intensely, I've been thinking about our denser emotions, anger and shame and guilt and rage and grief, and the harder emotions to hold, and thinking about the distinctions between them and what they mean at the individual level and what they mean at the larger collective level. And I just had this revelation, feels like a revelation to me, about how destructive shame is, not only as an individual emotion, but at the level of the collective, and how it really impedes transformation. And it impedes transformation because it's an emotion of the ego. Shame is about the deep confrontation with an ego that is committed to holding on to itself. Okay? The ego that's committed to holding on to itself, and I've been in conversations with this in other spaces, but our egos are here. They're useful for us. That's why we have them. They give us a sense of self-will, and self-direction, and actually make us want things, including our own well-being. And they make us self-focused. And the truth is, we need all of it, right? Like, there is a part of us that needs to be self-focused. When we are not self-focused, we allow people and things to run all over us, right? That's where the violences of codependency and self-sacrifice and I have thoughts about how that plays out on the larger collective and social levels as well. But I want to say all of that to say the ego is a tool amongst the many tools that we have. But our investment in ego as our identity, the who I think I am, which really is just, your construction of your personality and the inputs of your conditioning, right? It is nature and nurture, just so we're clear. Some of that shit you just came with, and some of that you were conditioned to have. And the combination of the two form your ego. But your ego is not who you are. It's not your identity. Your identity is your soul. Your identity is your essence as pure love. And you also have to be a personality here on earth. That's part of the work. But also part of the work is not to over-identify with the personality. Not to think of it as your highest self. Your highest self is beyond your personality. It's beyond your ego. And shame is your ego's confrontation with who it thought it was, right? It's confrontation with who it thought it was, but it doesn't surrender who it thought it was. It laments who it thought it was inside of itself, right? So it's a crisis of identity that stays at the level of self. I want us to really hear this. Shame is a crisis of identity that stays at the level of self. The problem with a crisis of identity that stays at the level of self is that it just reinforces the self, right? If our ego is out is if we're over-identified with our ego, and shame is a crisis of ego identification, then it just doubles down on the ego identification. Just from the other side. Instead of I'm so great, I'm so awful. It's the same shit. It's not different. Right? Oh, I'm so lofty. I'm above. Da 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 da. Oh, I'm so horrible. I'm below. Either way it goes, it's I. And the problem with the I's is generally when we're operating with shame, it's because we did something that had an impact on someone else at the level of the individual or at the level of the collective. And shame reinscribes the egocentric nature of the harm. So the harm just becomes about you again. You don't free the other person. You don't aid the other person in their transition. You just return to making it all about you. That's what shame does. It makes it all about you again. And the difference between shame and grief is an honoring of the experience of the other. You are not just lamenting your experience. You are lamenting their experience. When I grieve my mother's loss, I'm not just grieving that she's absent from my life. I'm grieving the harm that came to her. I'm grieving how difficult her journey was. I'm grieving the things that she wasn't able to overcome in this lifetime. I am connected to her experience. That's what I'm doing. And part of what happens is that we put shame where grief needs to be. And I was thinking about this at the level of race, but I'm thinking about it at the level of patriarchy. I'm thinking about it at the level of capitalism. And I'm thinking about it at the level of the individual. That we were walking around with shame once we're confronted with the harms that we've done, where we need to be putting some grief. Right? But grief stops being about you. Grief doesn't reinscribe the ego. Grief transcends the ego. Your selfishness has to leave the narrative. And what happens instead is that you literally just let yourself feel the pain. All of it. Which includes your pain, but it's not limited to your pain. And so, we're not moving as a collective in many ways because some of y'all are stuck in shame, which is to be stuck in your ego. And you won't grieve, which means to feel the collective sorrow, the collective sadness, the collective harm that our actions have created. To feel sad for what we have done and what it has done to others. Grieve. And grieve will break your ego. Shame will hold it in place. And your ego is in the way of your soul being the fullest expression of itself. And it is your soul that allows you to stop harming. All right. That's what I got this morning. I hope we are moving through these perilous and difficult times with compassion for ourselves and the courage to grieve.